Ever since Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, Republican officials have been on the hunt for voter fraud, digging into every different state looking for it. And what do you know? We finally found some. Unfortunately, they were the ones doing it all along, as is so often the case. Brian Pritchard, who you can see here, is the vice chair of the Georgia GOP and a right-wing talk radio host and the owner of pro-Trump propaganda website, who just looks like the greatest sort of guy. But maybe the most interesting thing about him is that he has voted illegally 9 different times. This guy just loves voting illegally. So he has long pushed the big lie, saying that Donald Trump was screwed out of the election. So he's very worried about election integrity, despite the fact that he has repeatedly violated voter laws. So he had previously been sentenced to probation for felony check forgery charges way back in 1996. Now, as a result of his probation, Pritchard was not allowed to vote in Georgia, which, by the way, is the sort of law that I don't agree with. I don't know why you should not be able to vote anymore after that. But right-wingers definitely like that sort of law. He is one, you'd think he would abide by it. Before we continue with the story, we depend on members to keep on going. Don't wait, click join now on YouTube. But no, in 2008, he signed voter registration documents declaring he was, quote, not serving a sentence for having been convicted of a felony involving moral turpitude. He then voted a total of 9 times between 2008 and 2010. He told the court it was simply an error. Quote, do you think the first time I voted, I said, oh, I got away with it. Let's do it 8 more times? I wasn't thinking that, but now I think that's exactly what happened, actually. I feel like you just described the actual thought process. So he was ordered to pay $5,000 in civil penalties and be, quote, publicly reprimanded by the state election board for his conduct. Because despite doing it 9 times, it apparently was not that big of a deal. But Crystal Mason was sentenced to 5 years for accidentally voting illegally and thankfully has just been acquitted. So it really matters what state you're in when this happens. But we're weirdly gonna have to give a little bit of credit for, I guess, consistency to Marjorie Greene in a second. But first, Brett, what do you think of this?
It's just impressive. You know, like the hypocrisy is so brazen and impressive. 9 times he voted, as we can prove, seemingly illegally 9 times. Every accusation is a confession of something that they did that was absolutely horrible. And they're out there saying that, and I know the people I know who complain to me personally about like how easy it is to mess up the system. They're just brainstorming how they want to mess up the system. They're not telling me that other people are going to go out and do this stuff. They can't prove it. The Brennan Center did a whole investigation and something. Let me count this. You know, how many percentage? Let me count the ways. 0.0003% and 0.0025%. That's not 0.0025 of all votes. Add 2 more zeros in there, and you've got like so little likelihood that any given vote would be fraudulent. And they're staking all of their political identity on this. And in the meantime, they're also doing the thing they're accusing others of doing.
Yeah.
And we have it. This is him. This is the face behind it. It isn't somebody that they're going to tell you is like some green card holder who magically can vote now.
Yeah, 100%. And look, we've covered so many stories like this. We're not gonna run through all of them. It happens sometimes. It seems to disproportionately be Republicans, but even so, at the end of the day, Brett's right. It doesn't change elections. I mean, it could. There have been a couple congressional races that were actually won by 1 vote, but it almost never would actually matter. And by the way, he voted illegally 9 times. I was thinking about it. I don't even know if I voted 9 times, and he's voted illegally 9 times. But anyway, very briefly, Marjorie Greene, obviously from the same state as him, put out a tweet that said the first vice chairman, Brian Pritchard, voted illegally 9 times. He must resign immediately. The Republican Party is the party of election integrity. That part is a lie and a knowing lie, but we continue. So she goes on to say the 2020 election was stolen in Georgia through rampant voter fraud. I will remind everyone, that's the election that brought her to Congress. So Was it stolen or was it not stolen? Is your election valid or is it not valid? But anyway, the point is that she's actually calling for him to be resigned, so she gets credit. Not much, because it costs her absolutely nothing to oppose this guy. He has no real political power over her, but it's something. At least she acknowledged that a Republican broke the law.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.